All right, YouTube. I'd like to speak to the concept of there being no drought in California that Donald Trump alluded to. I've got to say there are several things that need to be said. He's pointing out the Delta smelt as being a major waste of water. This is a threatened species, and what they do is they pump water in to keep their numbers afloat, essentially. He's technically right there. That is an enormous use of water. Does it make up for the fact that California is exceptionally dry right now? I'm going to remain ambivalent but pessimistic on whether it would have overall that big an impact, honestly. Turning off the water flow to this one species and diverting it to other uses, yeah, it would help, certainly, local farmers and so forth. I'd also like to point out a lot of people, they talk about like, oh, we need to restrict the amount of water people are putting on like their gardens and stuff. It's a tiny usage compared to farming and industry. Those are the biggest uses of water within the state of California. But I think there's something here. I pointed this out over a year ago when the drought was still, at its peak. And a lot of people didn't, I guess, listen to this. California is essentially a giant desert. California has been abnormally wet for the last century or so. That is, that this is fairly normal weather for California. The fact that millions and millions of people decided to build gigantic, water-unfriendly cities out in what is essentially a desert area that ranges from actual literal Mojave Desert to the steppe of the lower Central Valley up into the kind of temperate forests of the far north of the state doesn't mean anything to Mother Nature. People decided to build there. This would be like saying, I'm going to build a city in the middle of the Gobi Desert and run a pipeline up into some mountains where there's some sporadic rainfall and irrigate it with that. And then you have a couple years where it's really, really dry and there's not a whole lot of water coming down. And people start ranting about climate change, or people start ranting about looking for ways to save water. You're in a fucking desert. No wonder there's less water. Did you ever stop to think maybe the last 100 years of recorded human history isn't a perfect indicator of the actual long-term average trends in climate in every fucking part of the globe? Here's where I have a problem with people who also believe strongly in anthropic climate change. I compare human emissions output to what happens anytime a fucking volcano goes off, and I look at temperature trends from ice cores dating back thousands of years, and I look at earlier human records like during the medieval warm period or something like that, and I say things just don't quite add up. I'm not seeing that there's enough evidence to suggest that this is the case or entirely the case. Maybe it's all nature. Maybe man contributes 50-50. Maybe it's 1% man and 99% nature. Maybe they're right and mankind is just deliberately and continuously fucking the earth up and it's irrecoverable now. Does it fucking matter? To me, no. Indeed, it doesn't matter. I got sick and tired of that debate some time ago. As for California, though, let's look at the state's climate. It's a dry state. No shit there's too little water for tens of millions of people living there. Because they use water for everything. We're human beings. We use water for all. We use water to wash our clothes. We use water to grow our lawns. We drink water. We take baths. We do all of these different things. Water is used in almost everything that we do in this planet. So marching into an area where you already have to dam up a bunch of rivers and heavily irrigate it in order to get it to grow so much as a fucking soybean plant, yeah, there are going to be times when it's extra dry. You could also have a 10-year period where you get like 5 times too much rain and everything floods and the crops fail, and they'll say, oh, this is climate change too, and now there's like pestilence everywhere. There's rodents out in the cornfield. It's stupid. People shouldn't be too concerned about the drought because one of the main problems is there are too fucking many people for the climate. You don't put that many people into an area that is largely desert and expect them, yeah, you're going to be able to use as much water as somebody living in the Amazon. You're going to be able to use as much water as somebody living here in the North Woods, where, you get a couple thunderstorms a week in summer. You get feet of snow in the winter. We never have to worry about having no snow coverage in the winter. We never have to worry about a drought that's more than a couple of weeks long at most, and even that's a rarity for the most part. We don't worry about that. that. We know long term from centuries and centuries and centuries ago, from the fucking 1600s, what the weather's been like. And even if it were to become abnormally warm, we could adapt. We've got the lakes, we've got the rivers, we've got the high mountains and so forth. California is mostly desert at its wettest. And people are complaining, there's too little water. Oh, I want to take a shower, but it can only make 2 minutes long or I get fined. So fucking what? You chose to live there. If you're living in like LA, you're living in what was once a piece of desert. You're not living in the jungle. You're not living in a temperate zone. You're living in a desert. The Mojave's not that far away from you. Why are you complaining? Why don't you just adapt? Use xericulture. Grow a bunch of cacti and stuff. Get used to washing your car with a dry rag instead of hosing it down constantly. Take a shorter fucking shower. Put an aerator on your faucets. Get fucking used to it because that's fairly normal weather for California. That's the one problem about forecasting drought, or there's too much rain here, there's too little there. It's too hot here, it's too cold there. This winter was abnormal, that winter is abnormal for a different reason. There's too many hurricanes, there's too few hurricanes. You've only got a couple centuries at most of solid data in most of the most optimistic cases to make that determination. That science is ultimately still in its infancy. This is a dynamic, ever-changing planet. No shit, things change. No shit, California gets dry. Texas gets a little bit too wet and there's a flood. There's a landslide or something. It's Earth. Get used to it. That's what fucking happens here. You know, maybe the reason aliens haven't come and settled this planet is it's just too dynamic for them. Too many wild weather swings. They're not willing to risk their lives on a planet where it rains mildly oxidizing liquids from the sky. They just don't want to have to fucking deal with it. They're on some desert planet or something, or a planet made entirely out of a giant block of salt, and that's all they eat. No, people in California and other dry areas, they need to get real. Yeah, there's going to be droughts there. You're in a desert, essentially. Unless you're in like the Bay Area or the far north of the state, you're basically in a very, very dry climate. You know, you're not that far away from places like Vegas. Vegas is going to have problems too. Vegas is heavily irrigated. You think that city sprung up in the middle of the desert without them running some pipes to it? Oh, of course they did. Well, there's a problem. You're messing with the ecology. Also, you don't think it might change the weather just a little bit, that you've locked up most of the state's water supply artificially, and then it doesn't even resemble what the state looked like 100 years ago as far as the geology goes, as far as the water, where the rivers are flowing, where the standing water is? You don't think that changes the weather? Every little goddamn grain of sand you move changes the weather. It's called the chaos theory, and it is true. So yes, let's suffice it at that. California needs to stop worrying about the drought so much. I'm not saying that Trump's, fuck the Delta smelt, pump that water elsewhere. That's not going to take care of your problems. What's going to take care of your problems is realizing the climate you live in and adapting and changing your lifestyle to deal with that fact. That's about all. Peace out.